In this episode, you'll discover how to train in the week before your race.
Feel the grip of the oar handle, smooth yet firm in your hands. Taste the salt of your own sweat and the occasional splash of water. It's all part of the journey. Welcome to another episode of Faster Masters Rowing Radio. Each week, our host, Masters rowing coach Rebecca Caro, dives deep into the world of Masters rowing. Whether you're on the water or in the gym, join us to become a faster master. Let's go rowing.
Hello, everybody, and welcome to another edition of Faster Masters Rowing Radio. I'm Rebecca Caro. Today, we're talking about the taper before racing. What's a taper? It basically is a reduction in your training volume so that you are ready to race on the day of your big event. Now, knowing you're ready to race is an interesting feeling if you've never had it before. You should feel like you're super energetic. You should feel like you're almost jumping out of your skin with energy and enthusiasm, that you're ready for anything. You might find your adrenaline's a little bit up because you're excited as well. You also will probably find your adrenaline's up because you're a little bit nervous, but it's not necessarily just that. The important thing is that the taper is designed to prepare you. Remember, when you train, it puts your body under stress, and to race, we need to remove those stresses so that you can give a really good performance. So, how do tapers work? In team sports, classically, they will taper and prepare every single week because they might have a match every weekend. In rowing, it's a little different. We tend to, even in the sprint season, only have maybe 2 weeks between each regatta event, maybe more. But certainly for your big event of the year, you will want to do a good taper. Just thinking about your entire year, most masters rowers have 2 big peaks a year, a winter and a summer one, usually a long distance peak and a sprint racing peak, where sprint racing is 1K. You can do more than one sprint racing peak. So classically, you might do your own national championships event and then go and do another event later on, something like the World Rowing Masters, which is later in the year. But remember, after every peak, you have to reduce your training volume, rest, and reset before you can build to another peak. It really doesn't work if you peak and then go straight back into hard training again. So, taper is exactly what it says. It's all about reducing the volume and frequency and intensity of your training. But the intensity is quite interesting. So, if you think about a week before your big race, that's generally when your taper starts. So count back from race day. If it's a Saturday or if it's a Sunday, if you're at a 2-day regatta, choose your most important event. So say the quads, your big thing. Make the taper count back from your quads race and trust that your fitness will sustain you onto the finals and the events that you have after that key race, maybe on the Sunday. Depending on how often you train normally, your taper needs to be somewhat varied. So a classic taper would include much shorter practice in terms of time on the water, and also higher intensity pieces, so they will all be at least as a minimum at race pace or above race pace. So you might be doing fartlek type training, you might be doing overrate type training, but the intensity is really high, but the duration of the outings will be less. Now, if you train 6 times a week on the water or in the gym, that pattern of workout, particularly the days of the week that you're used to training on, should be continued if possible. The biggest problem is travel. many of us have to load a boat trailer and drive or fly to wherever we're going to be racing. And classically, if your regatta starts on a Saturday, you'll be traveling on the Friday or maybe the Thursday night. So you can still train Thursday morning. Friday is not going to be a training day. If you have a regatta like the Australian Masters that is coming up in the next 2 weeks, the regatta starts on a Thursday. So you might need to travel on the Tuesday or the Wednesday. And of course, that's going to disrupt your normal days of the week that you're training on. So you need to make those adjustments. In the Faster Masters program, we recommend that as a minimum you train 3 days a week, Tuesday, Thursday and Saturday or Sunday, but mostly people train on Saturday. And then the other days are optional, and there is always a rest day. Now, if you train 3 times a week, following the pattern that I just described, you get a rest day in between each workout. So your taper needs not be any different from that, because you're already getting quite high amounts of rest relative to your training volume and intensity and frequency. For those people who train 6 days a week, they're going to be doing a slightly different taper. So in the taper program, we've put asterisks next to the days where you must do the workout, and the others don't have an asterisk next to them. Now, in general, we will always be doing practice starts during the taper week. Every single time you're on the water, you need to practice your starts. If you're doing multiple different crews, that's really useful because, of course, you want to practice it in your single and you want to practice it in your quad, etc. We'll also be doing race pace pieces which mimic different parts of the race. So a 1,000-meter race easily divides into 4 quarters or 2 halves. So you could be doing pieces in the first half of the race off a standing start. You could be doing pieces that are mid-race. You could be doing pieces that are your sprints to the line. And the taper recommends which ones you should be doing. In addition, it's really useful if you can to do at least one of those workouts on the course where you're going to be racing, in the direction of racing. Particularly if you're not used to training in a buoyed course, a buoyed course, it's really good steering practice. It's very good to familiarize yourself with the surroundings. So some regattas, for example, will have a warm-up area that's buoyed off so that you are separated from the racing. Some will enable you to do loops. Some will ask you to train behind the 1K start. Maybe they'll let you paddle down to the 2K start and then warm up between 2K and 1K. So knowing what the local situation is really useful, and being familiar with it. And then also getting practice in backing onto the start itself. Even if you just back in, and do a start of 15 strokes and then paddle. One of my favorite workouts in a taper is to do what I call a roll over the course, where you do every single push that you have planned in your race plan and then paddle at about 24 or 26 strokes a minute in between them. So you do your racing start, drop down to 24 or 26, then do, if you have a push, say at 500 meters, you do that push, which might be a 10, a 20, a 30 stroke, whatever it is that you practiced and planned, and then you drop back down to 24, 26, then you bring the rate back up and maybe do your finishing sprint. That's great in several ways because it gives you bursts of intensity, it gives you practice on the course, and it keeps your blood going at a slightly higher pace than normal. We don't often paddle at 24 to 26, but it gets you familiar with the racing distance. And that's also a really useful thing to do. So your taper needs to cover off, firstly, recovery. By doing higher intensity and less duration, you will have more rest. You'll be expending less energy, and that's really important. It's also about optimizing your performance, both psychologically and physiologically, which obviously some of that echoes into the recovery, but you might also have things like visualizations planned as part of your taper. Injury prevention is also said to be part of a taper because you're doing less and you're resting your body, so you're less likely to get injured during the race event, the regatta itself. Bringing mental and physical freshness and good energy levels into the event will help you overcome things like nervousness and anxiety. And I'm told that also hormonal balance is part of the benefit of taking rest. Now, this may not happen to you as a master, but one of the things that tapers have been known to produce is allergies and viruses. So I know people who at the time were on national teams, but when they started their taper down from intense training towards the racing event, their body succumbed to a virus. And of course, any sort of cold or flu or nowadays COVID means that you're not going to race well. And so do take extra care over personal hygiene, like washing your hands. If you're flying, you might want to wear a face mask just to try and be sure that you don't catch something on the plane. Just be careful and protective of your own body because you've worked really hard for this race event, and don't undermine your own performance by succumbing to something that is easily preventable. So back to something we've talked about in the past, what are the things you can control and what are the things that are out of your control? Control all the controllables. So I hope that's been a useful run through, and I look forward to seeing so many of you at race events later on this summer. Tell us how you go.
We are part of the Rowing Chat Podcast Network. Please tell your fellow rowers about the show. If you've learned just one helpful thing from today's episode, please consider supporting the show for as little as $1 per month by visiting fastermastersrowing.com/podcast.